QCSportsInferno.com presents ZRadio with Mike Eckerman. I'm Corey Schrader. Give us a call if you want to join in, 309-524-5558. Obviously, the big story to talk about today is how the Iowa Hawkeyes found themselves unranked a month ago and are now third in the country.
You know, I've never seen anything like it where a team went from unranked for 9 straight or 8 straight polls, and then they go in four polls. They go from unranked to number 3 in the country. I've never.
I agree. I haven't seen it either, but I don't think. And if you look at it now, I mean, the Hawkeyes have beaten 7 top 50 RPI teams.
Oh yeah.
They have the most wins against top 25 teams in all of the country right now.
Oh, it's insane.
So it's seeing that, it's very obvious to see why they've moved up so quick.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's and you know what the funny part is I was thinking about this earlier today. It's not like with the football team where, and I think unjustified for the football team, but it's not like with the football team where they said everybody was going, oh, they're not that good, they haven't played anybody, blah, 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 blah. In this case, they've beaten one of the toughest schedules in the country, really.
Oh, by far. I mean, if you look, let's take North Carolina, for example. Okay? If you just look at their schedule, they're kind of like what Indiana is right now in the Big Ten.
Right.
In all total, they've played a number 2 Maryland and a number 22 UCLA. That's it.
Right.
That's it. And
they've played some others and lost to them.
Well, they played Texas and lost to Texas, and they lost to UNI.
Right. 2 teams that one of them wouldn't even be in the tournament, and Texas would be on the fringe of being in the tournament. Right.
So if you look at that, I mean, and compare that to Iowa, there's no comparison. Iowa's schedule was tougher. Now, you look at who's the other one. Oklahoma is ranked number 1. They kept their ranking.
I know, isn't that insane?
Yeah, which I'm shocked.
I don't know that I've ever seen that before either.
Yeah, which is going to bring me up to a point here in a minute. But if you look at Oklahoma, their first, they beat Villanova. Okay, they were number 9. They lost to Kansas, and they beat West Virginia, and lost to Iowa State. Well, and then Baylor was 13. So they've had a pretty decent schedule. So, gosh, Iowa. I mean, really, if you look at it, if Iowa, which we both agree that losing to Iowa State, I think, helped Iowa, but if they would have beat Iowa State at that point,
they're number 1 team in the country.
They're number 1 team.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They're the number 1 team in the country if they would have beat them.
Now, here's my concern. I think we both can agree that I see Iowa losing more Thursday than winning. Okay, that's just they're playing a tough Maryland team. I would have the opposite thought if it was at home, but It's going to be in Maryland. So if Iowa loses, I will see how serious these pollsters take Iowa, because watching North Carolina or Oklahoma not lose its number 1 spot and Michigan State not really dropping, I would like to see if Iowa – obviously Iowa would drop, but I'd like to see how far they really drop them.
Well, I think it depends on how they play. If they come out and it's a undecided game in the final few minutes of the game, I think they stay within the top 5 or 6, probably with Maryland jumping up over them. But if they get beat by 20 points, then they'll drop. They'll stay in the top 10, but they'll drop a little bit further.
I just don't see Iowa losing by a big margin. I could see an Iowa victory here. The thing with Iowa, and then you just sort of just watch these other teams and seriously look at Maryland. They don't have an impressive schedule either.
Oh no! No, I agree
100%.
So
I mean, I'm confident that Iowa could get the win. Let me just put it this way. I'm confident Iowa can win this game. But it wouldn't surprise me at all one bit if Iowa were to lose this game.
No.
I wouldn't be,
but also,
you know how you get as a fan, you're just so ticked off and blah, blah, blah. I can believe Iowa losing. But I could see Iowa winning this game, and I could see Iowa winning this game by 15.
Yeah. Well, when you look at who Maryland has beat on their schedule, really, it's only Georgetown and Connecticut. Those are their two quality wins. Compared to Iowa's got Wichita State, who we all know was down some players, but still they beat them. Michigan State twice, Purdue twice, and Michigan. Yeah,
their two quality wins are against teams that aren't ranked.
Right.
Weren't ranked at the time. They've played two ranked teams. North Carolina, they lost 89-81, and Michigan State last week, where they lost 74-65.
Yeah,
okay.
They aren't. I was listening to the guy the other day. I couldn't stand listening to him. The Capel kid from who was I think he was at North Carolina, but he was doing the ESPN. Was it even Thursday night or whenever it was? And he was talking about. They were asking who the best team in the Big Ten was, and he says, well, it's obviously Maryland, and I don't think there's really even a debate about it, and blah, 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 blah. Well, it's because he's an ACC guy, and Maryland was the ACC team. So,
right.
Because even the guy who he was talking with said, well, why Maryland and not say Iowa? And then he started going off about Melo Trimble and blah, and it's like, okay, that's Homer talk now.
Well, Melo Trimble was with Maryland last year when they came up to Iowa and lost by like 18 points.
Well, that's the thing is let's not forget Iowa beat them pretty handily last year, and they lost. Yeah. They lost an all-conference performer, and we lost an all-conference performer.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They had Trimble last year when Iowa beat them like by 18, and sure they've got a couple, but Iowa's size and length, and Iowa could beat you any way. They could beat you fast. They could beat you slow. The biggest thing for Iowa is I know they're going to score. It's just how their defense plays.
I would say that the only thing Iowa doesn't do as well as what they did last year, and that's basically because of probably more Olaseni than White, but White a little bit too, is just a low post back to the basket type of presence when things get bad, because they don't really, Woodbury doesn't catch the ball in the post like that a lot.
No, but I think the beauty of it, though, is with Iowa, their bigs can shoot the three, so their bigs are coming out to the top to guard, Iowa's guys who can hit the three, and once that threat is there, then that opens up drives to the basket, and I think that helps as far as the post play is concerned, but I'm not scared of Maryland's post play as opposed to I'm more scared of Purdue's post play. Purdue is huge. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
But they've had fits.
Well, let's not forget, too, Purdue, when you look at the stats from the other day, you start wondering how Iowa won, and really won kind of handily, because the stats show the game should have been pretty even. Really, where Iowa beat them was on the free throw line.
Yeah, even that was a struggle.
I know. But it was from the free throw line is where they got most of their where their big advantage was. I think it was a 10 or 11 point advantage on the free throw line, because from 3-point range, it really was pretty even for the most part.
Well, what about turnovers?
Turnovers was pretty even too.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty even matchup, and Iowa got beat fairly handily on the boards. I think
Well,
Iowa only had 5 offensive rebounds.
well, that's the thing about Purdue. They're so big, but that's what doesn't scare me about Maryland. Really, it's more Maryland kind of reminds me of almost like Michigan State. I
Yeah,
would say would be the closest to it.
yeah, I would agree. I mean, as far as
Um,
having a little bit of everything, the one thing that Maryland has Diamond Stone, and I think Maryland's probably a little bit better shooting team, um, because you got Melo Trimble, who is your point guard, and he can shoot. He's not. I mean, he's not a knockdown shooter. He's a shooter about like Gazelle is, but that Tum Tum Nairns, he couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat.
right.
But when you look at the going back, Iowa had 9 steals, Purdue had 8, 4-2 in blocks, 17-15 in assists. But Iowa got beat 41-33 on the rebounds, and 14-5 offensive rebounds for Purdue to 5 offensive rebounds for Iowa. Free throws were 8 for 15 compared to 18 for 28. That's the ball game right there. 3-pointers, they were 9. They made 9. We made 11. But the difference was they took 23 shots to make their 9. We only took 20. Whereas they took 10 more shots than Iowa did. They shot the ball 64 times. Iowa shot it only 54. But they were much more efficient with it.
Well, that's what it comes down to too. I think Iowa's defense has been. I wouldn't say. Look, their offense is much better than it was last year. I'm confident in this. I don't know. I think Iowa matches up well with Maryland. I see Iowa winning this game, but it wouldn't shock me if they lost this game. After you've beat Michigan State at Michigan State, you've beaten Purdue at Purdue, two of the toughest places, not only in Big Ten, but in the country to win a game. I'm not as intimidated going to Maryland. And actually, if you kind of look at it, it seems like the games are a little closer at Carver than they are on the road.
Yeah.
Except for Rutgers. And Rutgers cracks me up because they look bored.
Oh,
they were going through the motions, and it affected their play. And even in the post game, so, gosh, someone asked Utah about, hey, did you guys kind of take Rutgers lightly? And Utah paused, kind of had that smile, like, yeah, we did. But then, Rutgers is a good team. They're a Big Ten team, and did all the politically correct crap.
Right.
But you could tell just in that little smile that Iowa just took them. Look, we know we're better than these guys. Let's just do what we need to do to get done, get out of here with a win, come back home, play another tough game against Purdue. And I think combine all of those tough games that Iowa has played, I think that helps Iowa more than Maryland, because really if you look at Maryland, they started losing once they hit the Big Ten.
Right.
Play. That's when they're getting the losses. They lost to Michigan at Michigan. Iowa beat Michigan by 12 or something like that. Granted, it was at Carver, but still. It's not that the Hawks won these games. It's how they're winning these games in impressive fashion. It's not coming down to Iowa up by 4, and now we're shooting free throws to extend the lead.
Right.
Thank you. But it'll be a tough matchup. I can't, Iowa could lose this one, but I tell you what, if Iowa wins this game, they are in driver's position, period, the end in that Big Ten.
Well, I look at it probably a little bit differently. I think we're on the same lines, but we're like 51-49, that sort of thing. Whereas I look at it and I think, okay, it's a road game against a top 7 team, I think they are. And anytime you're going on the road against a top 10 team, I don't care if it's Iowa, I don't care if it's North Carolina, Duke, whoever, I expect them to lose. But I expect them to lose, but I look at it the same way you did, but just the opposite way, but I wouldn't be shocked if they won.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because Iowa's already beaten a top 5 team on the road this year.
Right, and then and almost beat Iowa State on the road. Should have really beat Iowa State on the road, and beat Purdue on the road.
Yep, and beat Purdue on the road. That's why, and the fact that these road victories, 17 points, a 17-point victory at Michigan State with the full squad, coming down from 17 points on the road against Purdue, flipping that and winning by 7 on the road. I don't think this team is intimidated. I think this is where the experience helps, and they know what to expect on the road.
No, I agree 100%. I agree. I don't think they're going to walk in there and they're going to be when I think of Jared Utoff, I think of Tom Brady. In the respect that I always hated Tom Brady and still do, but I envy him because I always feel like in the final minute of a game, his blood pressure is 120/80, and he's the calmest person in the stadium. And I look at Utoff and I think the same thing. I think, man, he just doesn't get rattled.
He doesn't.
The only time I thought I saw him maybe get a little, not rattled is not the right word, but a little bit emotional in the way he was playing was yesterday when, what's his name, Caleb Swanigan blocked a shot in the first few minutes of the game. And then Swanigan went down and scored. Utoff got the ball out of the inbounds, took it coast to coast, and went down and took a bad shot. And I thought, okay, that was a bad shot. You shouldn't have taken it. But I also kind of thought, okay, good. I like the fact that you want to shove it in this kid's face.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Every player is going to do that. The thing is, it's just the consistency of it. And Utoff is a cool cat. He just sits there and he does his job. He does what he's supposed to do. He's in there for a purpose. And all of a sudden he's in, not only Big Ten Player of the Year talks, but possibly National Player of the Year. Now, that's going to be difficult, but he's part of those talks.
Right.
But he doesn't get rattled when there's a bad call, which I thought that game against Purdue was horribly called. He doesn't get rattled on. He doesn't get rattled on fouls. He doesn't get rattled 99% of the time on if he makes a mistake or if someone blocked his shot or he just got beat. He just does his thing. And as far as Peter Jock is concerned, I think Peter Jock's going to have a better game against Maryland than he did against Purdue. I don't think they have a guy that they just stick on Jock and just play defense and nothing else. That's not Maryland's game. And I don't think Maryland has the cohesiveness or the role player, except for Trimble, that knows their role.
Well,
if you look at Trimble's their big guy, but they've got the big guy you're talking about. He's a freshman.
Diamond Stone.
He's still a freshman.
Right.
Woodbury, as much as uncoordinated that guy is, he's gonna do his thing. But Iowa players know their role. They know what they're doing. They know who comes off the bench right now. And like Matt Painter said in the postgame, he said, geez, Iowa brings in Ewell or Bear and Wagner and Ellington. He goes, at some point, even when they bring in their bench players, they have a better lineup than us. He goes, they're a hard team to beat.
Yeah. Well,
that says it all.
I'll tell you what, too. It was nice to see Brady Ellington come in yesterday and play well because, as you know, I've been saying for a while, they need to start looking for a replacement for him. And I don't My guess is that a coach, I don't know if it was Fran or if it was his position coach or whatever, got to him and said, "Hey, you need to be more aggressive," because he came in shooting yesterday. He shot more yesterday than he had the rest of the Big Ten games combined.
Oh, I think so, and I think one of the biggest things that I was impressed with him was he had hustle.
Yes.
He didn't hesitate. He tried to go for rebounds. He tried to legitimately go after loose balls, where the other games he almost looked like a lost puppy on a loose ball, like, should I dive for it, shouldn't I dive for it? This time he made a decision, right or wrong. You're going to make wrong decisions. God knows you're going to make wrong decisions, because look at Mike Gazelle. Yeah. Sometimes, and it always happens in the second half, Gazelle will go through a 5-minute stretch where he just loses his mind.
Yeah.
And I like how Fran just kind of says, okay, Clemens, take over.
Yeah.
You know, Gazelle's trying to do too much. But I like the fact that Ellington, he got in there. He played scrappy, and I think by him playing scrappy helps his offensive game and his confidence in the shot, and it showed. And he might be a big piece if he could build off of this. He'll be a huge piece for Iowa moving forward.
Well, they need that. They need that player to take some minutes away from Clemens and Gazelle and Jock, because the game against Rutgers, they played too much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did. They played too much. So they needed somebody, especially as you start going down the stretch. The one thing I would say, too, you had said that you thought Iowa had it wrapped up, or Iowa's in the driver's seat. If they win, I think they're still in the driver's seat even if they lose.
I agree that they're still in the driver's seat even if they lose, because Maryland has a couple losses. I guess in my mind I'm looking at more of the cushion.
Yes, I think they're in the driver's seat if they lose. I think if they win, I mean, I think you'd start taking that they're the you don't want to say they wrap it up, because that's obviously not the case. But you would say that they have a better than average shot of winning it all then if they win. Or a 7 out of 10 shot, I would say, even, because let's say you split with Maryland let's say if you win, you split with Indiana and lose to Michigan, then you're looking at possible other losses at Illinois, maybe. But I don't think so. At Penn State, I don't think so. At Ohio State is possibly the only other one. So you're looking at probably 3 losses being the most that you're going to get if you beat Maryland. And if you lose to Maryland, you can still say Indiana is a split, Michigan's a split, or I'm sorry, they lose to Michigan, and then you have Ohio State, and I think they beat Ohio State, to be quite honest, at Ohio State. So you're still at 15-3. Well, you know what? When you start looking at Indiana when you start looking at how Indiana's going to go there, tomorrow night's a big game for Indiana, actually, because they're at Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's, like, in my power rankings, I think I still have them number 9 or something like that, number 8 or 9. So I don't see. I mean, this isn't what you call it a good quality win, one that the NCAA would look at and go, okay, that they beat Wisconsin. Well, because that's just not Wisconsin this year. But if they lose, that's going to start putting some doubt in their mind, because then they've got Minnesota over the weekend, who is horrendous. Then they start the Big Ten. Then they start their schedule, because then they go to Michigan next Tuesday. Then they're at Penn State. Then they get Iowa and Michigan State in a row. Then they've got Purdue, and then Iowa and Maryland, and they're at Illinois. I mean, they're back half of the Big Ten schedule. It's still not as easy as it's still not as hard as some others, but I mean, look at who they got twice this season. They got Iowa twice. They did not get Maryland twice. They don't get Purdue twice. And they don't get Michigan State twice. So 3 out of the 3 teams that you would have thought were the 3 teams at the beginning of the season, they didn't have to play twice.
Yeah, but they still have to play them once, and I don't think Indiana is. Yeah, I don't trust Indiana yet. I don't trust them. They haven't played anybody.
No. Well, and you start looking at it, they don't play Ohio State twice either.
They've played one ranked team all year,
and
that was Duke, and they lost by 20.
Yep. Now the one thing I'll say for them right now is they're beating people handily. I mean, they're crushing teams right now, but they're not any good teams. And they were at home. Both games they had this week were at home. Actually, now that I look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of their last 5 have been at home.
Yeah,
and their one on the road was just a 7-point victory at a bad Minnesota team.
Well, and they won on the road at Rutgers by 7 points.
Right.
I'm not worried about Indiana right now. The 2 teams that I'm worried about the most right now is Maryland and Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's tough. I thought Michigan was the best team that we played so far in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm not worried too much about Indiana at this point. Tomorrow's game will be telling, but if they lose, they should beat Minnesota. I think they'd lose at Michigan. I think they'll lose at Carver. They'll lose at Michigan State. The Purdue-Indiana one will be a good one in state, but that's at home. And I think they probably lose at Maryland too. I think Indiana, you're looking at probably maybe a 4 or 5 loss team there.
I agree 100%. So if I would just hold serve at home and only loses at Indiana, at Michigan, at Maryland, and then maybe Ohio State, but I think they'll beat Ohio State. That's 3 losses.
Right.
On the flip side, though, when you start looking at Maryland, if they were to beat Iowa tomorrow, then they've got at Ohio State, they'll win. At Nebraska, they'll win. Purdue at home, they'll win. They got Bowie State Tuesday, February 9th. That doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what? The second half of the season opens up pretty good for them, too. So they got Wisconsin at home, at Minnesota, Michigan at home, at Purdue, and at Indiana. So they've already got their 2 losses. If Iowa doesn't beat them tomorrow night, they probably won't lose for a while. They probably won't lose until they get to the end of February.
Right. But at the same time, and here's the thing to think about in regards to Iowa and on the road. Stats say that Iowa should lose at Indiana. Stats said we should have lost at Purdue. We should have lost at Michigan State.
Yeah.
And those were not only wins, but big wins. I mean, dominating wins.
Yes.
Purdue, I call that dominating because I don't care who you are, you come back down from 17 points on the road, flip it, win by 7. That's dominating. Basically, Purdue, you won in the second half 100 to 60. If you just look at the second half of both those games. So it doesn't scare me as much.
What the heck is that?
At Indiana because of what Iowa did at Michigan State, what Iowa did at Purdue. And if Iowa beats Maryland, then you could say, look, Iowa's resume is crazy good right now.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And if they can win on the road at Maryland, I'm pretty confident they can win on the road at Indiana.
Oh, I think so. there's not a game on the schedule that you look at and go, you know what, they're like a 8 or 9 point underdog where, there's every game that they go into, it's going to be pretty close to a pick'em game. I just, for me, when you're facing a ranked team on the road, I give the advantage to the ranked team, especially a top tier ranked team. But they're not going to be intimidated. They're not going to go in there thinking, can we win? They're going to go in there expecting to win. And, that's the way it should be for a team that has 4 seniors on it.
Right.
That's absolutely the way it should be. So I don't look at it and think they're absolutely going to lose those 3 games. I look at it and think, you know what? The chances are they're going to lose, but they've faced tougher environments than that already, and they've come out ahead. And this is just another tough road game.
Basically, the way the schedule plans out, if you look at it, at the end of the day, I think Iowa will end up, to me, and it comes down to this Thursday, depending on if they're a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Oh, I think if Iowa were to win Maryland, I think they're the odds-on favorite to get a 1 seed. Kind of goes along with the same thing with the Big Ten. If they were to win on Thursday, I think they're the odds-on favorite to get a 1 seed, because what you want is when you start looking and figuring out when you're going to lose, if you're going to lose, you want to start looking at it and think, oh shit, that's not what I wanted to do. Are these losses going to be spread out, or are they together? So if you're going to lose to Maryland, and we've already seen, say from Oklahoma, a loss to Maryland shouldn't hurt Iowa in the polls too much. It just shouldn't. So you start looking at it and you go, okay, they're still a 1 seed, possibly at minimum a 2 seed if they lose. But if they win, they're like locked in as a 1 seed for a while. I mean, they are absolutely locked in. Because then you got Northwestern should be a win, Penn State should be a win, Illinois should be a win, and then you've got at Indiana. Well, then you have, so now you're looking at that's what, February 11th. So you got you got 4 more victories under your belt. Even if you lose at Indiana, you're still a 1 seed. If you lose at Maryland, okay, let's say you fall down to 7, but you win at Northwestern, Penn State, and Illinois, well, now all of a sudden you got 3 wins to back yourself back up into that 1 spot.
Well, and that's where the resume comes in, because you could say, okay, they lost to Maryland. Well, what did they do before that? Oh, well, they beat a number 14 Purdue. They beat a number 22 Purdue. They beat a number 1 Michigan State. They beat a number 4 Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
They lost by 1 point on the road to a number 4 Iowa State. They beat a then number 20 Wichita State, which is about ready to crack the polls again. And they lost to a 17 Notre Dame. Iowa's resume is really good.
Well, and let's not forget about Florida State either, who at one point was nearing the top 40 in the KenPom rankings. I think they might be having a little bit of a more difficult time in the ACC now, but they're not a bad team by any stretch either that they beat.
Just looking back at Iowa, I think the biggest game that probably might have opened things up for Iowa was that Marquette game, when they just went up to Marquette and crushed them 89-61.
Oh, absolutely, they destroyed them.
And I think that, now granted, they lost their next 2 games, and those were all neutral courts. I think that Marquette game really showed what Iowa could be, and I think the Marquette and the Iowa State, Marquette, you had a big lead. Iowa State, you had a big lead, and you blew it. And I think Iowa from there learned. I was a little hesitant, obviously with Michigan State and Purdue saying, Iowa's got the big leads. When are they going to blow it? And they haven't.
Right. No,
and they haven't.
And you kind of feel like that now. The only thing that I feel like, because I was actually sitting there watching the game yesterday at the field house, and they had when Purdue put on the press, they had the out-of-bounds play, and I thought, man, if you could have just done it that simply against Iowa State, you'd have won, and you'd probably be the number one team in the country right now. If they would have just done that against Iowa State. I mean, against Iowa State, they looked like a fourth-grade team trying to get the ball in bounds. They were clueless as to what they were doing. It was absolutely ridiculous. But they've got that figured out since then.
And what I like about this Iowa team and this Iowa team being good is it's not like the football team where everybody said, you didn't play anybody. Mm-hmm. Iowa basketball has played a lot of somebodies and have won and beat a lot of somebodies. This team is 100% legit, and right now they're their own worst enemy. They have a choice to either continue what they're doing. It's basketball. You're going to lose a game. And maybe they win out. Who knows? But you expect them to lose a game or 2, 3. But they're legit. They can make some noise, and especially this year, which it's wide open.
Oh, when you start looking, everybody's got them a top 2 seed now at minimum. And when you start looking at who the top 2 or the first 2 games they would play in the tournament, if they're a top 2 seed, I mean, it's not a cakewalk, especially if you're a 2. If you're a 1, it's pretty damn close to a cakewalk. But if you're a 1 or a 2, you got a pretty sweet road to the Sweet 16.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Iowa. I don't know. There's just and Ewell and Bear and hopefully Ellington, and I think Wagner is doing just enough on the defensive end. I don't care about his offense at that point. Right now, I don't care about Wagner. If the more he scores, that's more of a bonus for us, so I'll take that.
Right. But
defensively, he's playing much better, and he's getting in there, and he's getting the hustle. And I tell you, this bench is very complimentary. And Ewell presents even a bigger challenge for defenders, I think, than Utah does, especially when you got both of them in there.
Well, when you got them both in there, I don't know how the hell you match up because you got 2 6'9" guys who can shoot the 3 and take you to the basket too. I mean, how do you match up with that? I don't know how you do that.
It's hard. It's hard. It's absolutely hard. And look at Nebraska or Purdue. Look at Purdue the other day. What Painter put whatchamacallit on Jock because he figured, well, if we can eliminate Jock, then okay, we can take the punches that Utah gives us. We just need to neutralize the second threat.
Right.
Well, but even though Jock, I mean, if you look at that, when he scored 13 points, that's quality.
That's really good.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to get that when Jock was defended the way he does, it's pick your poison. Then you bring in Ewell. That's a defensive nightmare, and that's what I think's gonna do help out Iowa against Maryland, because they do have the young bigs in there. Their biggest guy is a freshman.
Well,
he's good.
He's good, but when you consider that they just went against Hammond. Actually, that was a good time to play Purdue because then you had him going against Woodbury going against Hammonds and Haas. Well, that got you ready to go against Diamond Stone. And let's not forget too, Maryland doesn't have much of a bench.
No, they don't. But you also got to keep in mind when Ewell was in the game, Hammonds came out on Ewell.
Right.
And that's where the problem, I think, started to occur because of those mismatches. And then that frees up Ewell or Utah a little bit more and helps out Jock. I think, and you're right, Maryland's bench is not deep.
No.
And I think Iowa can throw a lot at you, and they could throw a lot more at you than what Michigan State threw at Maryland and what Michigan threw at Maryland.
Well,
because those two teams don't have the deepest of benches either.
Well,
Michigan State does, but they don't have anyone that's stepped up. Right. So that's a tough matchup for Maryland.
I think Iowa right now, the way they're playing, and I think you said it right when you talked about Ewell, especially when you have Ewell and Utah out there. Now imagine when you have Ewell, Utah, and Jock out there. But I think you said it right that they're just such a matchup, and I think they're a matchup issue for every team, though. I mean, they're a matchup issue for every single team they play, just because of that.
Now let me ask you this: do you think, as far as red shirts are concerned, now I know with Iowa they've got a couple red shirts with Hutton and Moss. But Andrew Fleming, has he played any minutes since the Big Ten started?
No. But once you play any regular season game in basketball, you cannot redshirt.
Okay. I didn't know if it was, you had to play a certain
It used to be that
percentage. Okay, was it? Okay.
It used to be that way, but now once you play in a game,
you're done. Okay.
Stick a fork in there. Yeah, because
go ahead. Which is fine. I was just wondering, how that would play out. But sorry, that just popped in my head. But as far as going back to your matchup stuff, Iowa's a matchup nightmare for anybody right now. And I think you hit the nail on the head with Maryland's bench. Iowa rotates, and they still play fast. That's going to be tough for Maryland. The thing about Maryland is they're at home. That's what they got for them right now.
Well, and it'll be interesting because you have 5 guys who average 10 points a game. In Melo Trimble, Robert Carter, Diamond Stone, Jake Layman, and Rashid Suleiman. Then after that, you go down to 5.7, 3.7, 2.5, 2.5, and most of them stats I'm sure were obtained during the preseason or the non-conference schedule.
Right.
The one thing you got to look at from them, they're not an amazing three-point shooting team, but they're also not bad. It used to be that 33% was what you were aiming for. Now you're probably looking for at least 35 to 37, 38%. And Melo Trimble's at 35%. Robert Carter's at 34.8. Jake Layman's at 37. Rashid Suleiman is the one they're going to have to look out for. He's at 46.3% from three-point range.
Right.
And they've got Melo Trimble's taking 96 three-pointers, Layman 81, Suleiman 80, and Nickens is a bench player. He comes in, and he's taking 89. So those are the ones that you've got to really pay attention to. Stone doesn't shoot any three-pointers. He hasn't made one all season.
Well, and you look at Maryland, Suleiman 6'4", Trimble 6'3", Carter, who to me is just a fill-in guy, 6'9", Stone 6'11". So you got Woodbury on Stone. Don Ewell comes in. Stone's on Ewell. Stone is a freshman. I don't think he can keep up with Ewell. They're a small team. And not only is Iowa taller than them, but the length that they have. Like if you look at Woodbury's 7'1", but he's got a 6'3" wingspan. I mean, his arms are kind of short. Right. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah.
But you look at Ewell, you look at Utah, you look at Jock, the length is just it comes down to Trimble. It's going to come down to Trimble. Trimble and Suleiman, Iowa's defense.
It's going to come down to Trimble and can Gazelle keep him in front of him.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I think he can.
Oh, I think so. When you start looking at Iowa shooting, it's funny when you start looking at the stats compared, because everybody thinks Iowa makes a ton of threes. Well, they make a lot of threes, but they're spread out. I mean, you got Jock and Utah, who are obviously standouts, and they've made 48% and 39% of their three-pointers. And then you've got, where is he? Dom Ewell's made 51% of his three-pointers. But you've got Utah, who's shot 89 times from the three-point range, and Jock, who shot 106. But then nobody else on the team is more than 52, and that's Anthony Clemens. So they really just spread out the wealth amongst everybody else. 23 pointers for Dom Ewell, 18 for Nicholas Baer, 12 for Brady Ellingson. So they really spread the ball around a lot amongst everybody.
Yeah, I mean, with Trimble will be the guy. He scored last year when they met. He scored 20 points.
Right.
So and really they've got. I mean, last year they pretty much have a new team except for Trimble.
Well, yeah, Jake Lehman is he was there. Carter was there, I believe. Stone's new.
Carter was not there.
Carter wasn't there. He must be. Oh, he's the transfer, right?
Yeah. Well, Suleiman transferred from Duke, but Carter did transfer from. Yeah, because last year the starters were Trimble, Wells, Smatry, Lehman, and Dodd. And then their reserves were Pack, Graham, Nickens, Wiley, Tchaikovsky, and Ram.
Gotcha.
But it came down to it was Trimble. He hit 3 3-pointers. Look, he's going to be. It'll be a tough game.
Yeah, it is.
It'll be a tough game.
There's no way around it. It's going to be a tough game. Just because it's a top 10 team, you expect the top 10 team to win. I would imagine the point spread probably has Maryland, I would say a 3.5 point favorite would be my guess.
Probably.
That would be my guess, is a 3.5 point. Let's see if I can find it here. No, that's football. I don't care about football. No, that's football too.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting game.
Here's
like I said, Iowa can win it.
Here's something.
Won't surprise me if they lose it.
To start to change it a little bit, or change what we're talking about a little bit. Here's what I was thinking of yesterday, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to do some research tonight and tomorrow. Is there a Division I Power 5 conference state basketball team, not a private school, a state school that's been worse over the last 5 years in basketball and football than Illinois?
Division, we're talking Division I, right?
Right. Division I. Out of your Power 5 conferences, the state schools, has there been anybody that's been worse than Illinois at basketball and football? Not in the Big Ten, I can tell you that.
Okay, so well, let's look at it. Okay, okay, let's go through it. Big 12. You got Oklahoma. Well, that speaks for itself. They're number one
Yeah.
in basketball, and so Kansas, they're great at basketball.
Right.
West Virginia, they're doing good this year in basketball.
Yep.
Baylor, they're good at both. Iowa State, they're good at basketball.
Yep.
The last 5 years, you can't say Texas because they've been good. Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU. Okay, so you can rule out those teams.
Yep.
So
Then
obviously the Big Ten. Well, what about Rutgers?
no, you're right. Rutgers would be my only one that I would think might be as bad. But I'd be willing to bet that their football team has been maybe a little bit better over the last 5 years. Let's see. RDCORDS, if I can spell. Go to my favorite here, Wikipedia.
What about
In 2011 and 2012, Rutgers was 9-4 and was 9-4 in the Big Ten, or was 9-4 in the Big East. And last year, Rutgers was 8-5.
what about maybe Washington State or Oregon State? Maybe I don't know. Washington State, I think, had a decent football team.
Well, I know Oregon State got rid of the basketball coach, Obama's brother, who does a terrible job on ESPN now.
If you look at the SEC, I would say their worst would be you'd probably say Missouri.
No, Missouri's won a couple SEC championships.
No, I'm just saying that that would be their worst.
Yeah.
So who would be another one? ACC.
Yes. Washington State has been in a bowl as recently as 2010, 11, and 12.
As far as football, basketball, I don't see anyone in the ACC that you could say was bad and worse than Illinois. Just put it this way, Illinois is becoming what Northwestern used to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I remember Northwestern on the schedule in both basketball and football. It was like, okay, win. You know, who's after Northwestern?
Right.
Or it used to be, let's just get by this game because we got Northwestern next. Now it's coming down to let's get by this game because we've got Illinois next.
Right. Yeah.
Because Minnesota's been decent at football, Rutgers decent at football, Penn State good at football, Northwestern solid at football, been pretty good at football. Wisconsin, obviously, basketball, Final Four, football. Nebraska, their basketball team's better. They're both average right now. Michigan State, Ohio State. Purdue, if it wasn't for their basketball team. Michigan, obviously. Maryland, it's their basketball team. Iowa, both teams. Indiana, their basketball team, and Indiana's been better than Illinois. So yeah, I mean Illinois, as far as the program between the two major sports, has got to be probably out of those conferences is probably the worst team.
Yeah, that's on. And also, then when you add in the recruiting base that they have, I mean, they've got to be the worst. They've got to be the worst Division I school for the power sports in the country.
Well, and I know a lot of the kids like in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get out, and they know about Illinois now.
Oh yeah.
They know why would I want to go to Illinois? You're going to Illinois if either you grew up a Illini fan, and that's where you want to go. Otherwise, they're probably their biggest scholarship is Illinois, and that's why they go.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not easy to pay them anymore either.
Iowa's built a good pipeline to Chicago, which makes sense. I mean, it's 3 hours away. It's close by. Illinois is just bad. The problem is it starts from the top, and they can't figure out the top. When you have problems trying to find an athletic director and even freaking organize your crap, you're going to suck. That trickles down.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the football coach, we all know it. In the football coach that they just hired, Cubitt, or just retained, actually. Did you hear what his buyout is? He's only got 2-year contract, but did you hear what his buyout is? $250,000 is all.
Yeah.
If this doesn't go well next year, he's gone. They were they needed to get an AD first, so they made a deal with this guy just because football doesn't mean crap there.
Well, and they don't have an AD because
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with Illinois. They needed to get an AD.
Yeah.
Look at the Chicago Bears. They never had a GM for years. Okay, until Jerry Angelo thinks he was the GM under Hallis, but of course you knew George Hallis pulled those strings. But once Finks got a little influence in there, Hallis did a good job hiring Ditka. Finks didn't want Ditka, but Finks helped out in the drafting process. And the Bears were good. And then they went away. They just had president of football operations who did way too much. And then the Bears tanked. Then they had bad drafts. Finally, they got a GM who had one decent draft, and they were good. They went to the Super Bowl in 2006, but they haven't had anything since. They've had bad GM hirings. But you still need to have a GM, which is college. It would be your athletic director. Illinois doesn't have it. Obviously, they're only going to sign these guys for minimum because when the new AD comes in, they're going to say, look, if you want me to be the athletic director, you got to put me in charge of hiring and firing. Now, he might not touch the Illinois baseball program because they're good, but if I'm the new AD at Illinois, I'm putting an emphasis on, we're losing this pipeline. People are going to Duke, to Louisville, to Iowa, to Wisconsin, to North Carolina, but they're not going to Illinois.
Right.
We need to do that.
Well, and I think that was the thing that Iowa decided that they needed to do for Iowa. And let's be honest, getting the top recruits in Iowa isn't the same as getting their top recruits in Illinois most years. So I'm not trying to compare the two. However, I will say Iowa usually produces one good recruit, one to two good recruits every year. But Illinois has what is considered a lot of times to be at least one McDonald's All-American, and then several others that are good recruits, and they don't keep them home. When's the last time Illinois got one of their own McDonald's All-Americans to stay there? And Iowa became good when they started keeping their best players home.
It's a big problem. Look, Illinois as a school sucks athletically.
Yeah, I mean, at the power sports, their other sports are doing pretty good, but their power sports are
Your money makers.
Their money makers are not doing well.
Right. I mean, you need to do well. I mean, and that's why I think if the Iowa fans that are listening, we can sit here and nitpick at Iowa, but enjoy it right now. Enjoy it. I mean, we got, we could sit back because we're so programmed of, okay, we're waiting for that downfall or that downturn at some point. We've got a football team that didn't lose a regular season Big Ten game. We've got a basketball team that hasn't lost since February 15th of 2015 as far as conference games. And you got a wrestling squad that hasn't lost. We've got an undefeated the Hawkeyes went to the Rose Bowl. We're talking number one seeds for Iowa basketball right now. It's time to enjoy it a little bit and let it ride and see where it goes. And I think the biggest thing here is to keep that success going. And I think Fran will, because I think he does a better job of recruiting than what Tom Davis would do. I like Tom Davis, don't get me wrong. I was disappointed in Iowa letting go of Tom Davis. I understood the thought of why he had to, and I was excited about Steve Alford. I'll admit that. But it's time to enjoy it. I think this is going to help Iowa in recruiting as well.
Now, here's my question, and I saw this, somebody tweeted it or something like that. I can't remember who it was. If Iowa is a 1 or 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, they make it to at least the Sweet 16, and a big boy comes calling, do you think Fran leaves?
No. I think Fran is kind of like Ferentz. I think he likes Iowa.
Well, now that
he's sold on it.
And now that his boys are playing.
Yeah.
Now, the only one, I was talking about this with my brother, the only school that I could see him leaving for is Notre Dame.
Maybe, but I think he's fine with the Big Ten. I think he likes the Big Ten. I think he's fine where he's at.
I
don't think he leaves, especially his age. He's not the youngest guy either.
No,
I think he
stays.
stays.
I think he is too. The only reason I say Notre Dame is because that's where he met his wife. His wife was a stud there. He coached there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that may be something he would think about down the line. But I don't think Mike Bray's going anywhere, so I don't think you have to worry about it. Unless Mike Bray was hit by a car, I don't see any reason why he would be gone. And really, then when you start looking at who would he leave for, you start looking at the power schools. Okay, Duke's not going, or Krzyzewski's not going anywhere. Even if he did, they're going to get a Duke guy to come in. Same thing at North Carolina. I don't think Roy Williams is going anywhere, and even if they did, they're going to get a Carolina guy. The same thing at Bill Self's not going anywhere at Kansas. Kentucky, Calipari's not going anywhere. I just don't, and I don't think he would leave to go anywhere else in the Big Ten. But I just don't see him. First off, I don't see any of those big jobs coming open. Second off, it would have to be a Duke, a Kentucky, a school like that for him to consider it. And I don't think any of the jobs are going to come open.
No, and I think what helps is it's still the Big Ten. And I think these coaches say, hey, look, I'm in the Big Ten. I'm in a Power 5 conference right now. And I've taken a Big Ten team, and I've made them a number 1, a number 2 seed. Mm-hmm. Why not? Let's keep this going. I'm still in the Big Ten. I'm still in a Power 5 conference. I still have the support of the fans. I still have the support of the school. And a lot of these people that come from the eastern side of the country, Kirk Ferentz is one of them. Granted, he coached here at Iowa for a few years prior to that, but it's a different life. It's a simpler life than out east. And I think when you have success in a Power 5 conference like that, and you're the top dog in that state. And if I'm an Iowa State fan, I'm pissed because what can I do as a school to prove to others that Iowa State is legit? But then when you start to have that success and you're as ranked as high as you are, and then have that school you're competing with, fighting for recruits, just leapfrog you in a matter of weeks to possibly becoming the number one seed, that's frustrating. But I think Fran has it all. And I think, his sons were young enough. I think he feels indebted, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way or sound insensitive, but when his son had cancer, the university, the hospitals, the people here rallied around it. I think that holds a meaning to him in a very special way. And as long as he's comfortable living in Iowa, I don't see him leaving at all. He's got a great gig.
No, I'm with you. I don't think he will either. First and foremost, I don't think any of the spots that he would leave for, or even I don't even think any of the spots that he would even consider are going to come open. And he's not going to leave to go to an Arkansas or an Alabama or even a Florida. He's going to want, if he was going to leave, it would have to be to a blue blood. And there's only about 5 or 6 blue bloods that you can put it on the board that they're just always going to be really good, or most of the time they're going to be really good.
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think he is set. I think between the age, his kids, the success that he's done, I think he was genuine when he said, "Look, when he first got hired, he said, this is the ultimate step. I'm in the Big Ten. I'm in the power. I went from Siena to the Big Ten. I'm here. This is where I wanted to get to some place like this." I mean, at the end of the day, Iowa's still in the Big Ten, and really with, especially this year, I mean, the sports community at the University of Iowa is just so successful. And if Iowa can do this for another couple years, now they're going to have a little down, but if they stay successful and in the public eye, people are going to come to Iowa. Football and basketball.
Why do you think it took him so long to get to a major school?
I think a lot, my honest opinion, is probably his fiery attitude that he had.
I agree with you.
Because of Bobby Knight. Now, he didn't have Bobby Knight. I don't think he's choked anybody. I love Bobby Knight. I've always said I love Bobby Knight. He was one of my favorite all-time coaches. He made a stupid mistake, but he paid for it. And I think the landscape at that point came to, do we want this fire guy? I mean, you look at him when he was at Michigan State and he slammed that chair and busted their floor. And ever since, he's kind of calmed down, of course, that, he had to talk with the AD and blah, 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 and he got suspended or something like that. I can't remember. I think that scared some teams. And I think with Iowa, they're looking for, well, with Iowa, it was kind of like a blessing, I think, because we had Todd Licklider.
Oh.
I love the movie The Hoosiers, but Todd Licklider played like the Hoosiers. Pass 5 times and shoot.
Oh.
Pass 5 times and shoot. Slow it down.
It was the worst basketball ever.
Correct. And I think...
You notice the guy hasn't been able to get back into it.
Right. Well, I mean, people look at it as, okay, you had some luck at Butler, but then all of a sudden, boom. I mean, you tried it with the big boys and bam, and you were horrible. And the fact that Iowa got rid of you in coaching world, got rid of them before you could technically say, these are my guys type of thing.
Right.
Like right now, this this is kind of like Fran's first, I guess you could say, big recruit, as far as multiple players coming in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look what it's done. Whereas Todd Licklider, they didn't even give him a chance. They were like, dude, okay, we're done. You're boring. No one is showing up to the games.
Well, the best
and
play,
I think
the worst problem with Licklider was people would have adapted had they won. Problem was they got worse every year, and the best player quit every single season.
Right. Because I think they realized that, okay, this style of play is not for me.
Right.
And I think he did a bad job recruiting those players, whereas Bo Ryan, which kind of has, Wisconsin has the Licklider disease, at least he could recruit the players that he needed to play that system, whereas I think Licklider sold a lot. Of course, Iowa is still a popular name before Licklider was a school to really consider.
I agree.
Especially for athletic people. So, but I think once they came in and realized, wow, this stuff is boring.
Yeah.
They started to leave, and they didn't like it. And Licklider was kind of tough behind the scenes, and McCaffrey might show how he's angry and they didn't call him Franimal for nothing. He's getting in people's faces, and his face turns 6 different colors. But when they win, he's like one of the players in the locker room, dancing around and doing all that. So he's a good players coach. Fran is, whereas I think Licklider wasn't. I think Licklider showed calmness on the court, but an assholeness off the court. Whereas I think Fran is,
I think Fran's an asshole off the court too, but I also think, and this is the way I think of it when I think of people wanting to coach my daughters and how I approach things is, there's times where I did stuff I shouldn't have done as a coach, but I also look at it and think, okay, yeah, I may have jumped on them a little too hard, but you know what? I was also the first one telling them great job when they did something right too, and I think Fran does that.
Where I didn't think Licklider did do that.
No.
See, I think players, and this is the thing about Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight was an intense guy on and off the court. But at the end of the day, players wanted to play for him. When they got the letter from Bobby Knight that said, I want you to play for the University of Indiana, 9 times out of 10, that player was ecstatic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, oh my gosh, Bobby Knight wants me. I want to play for Bobby Knight. I think what happened is, yes, he made a mistake. And I think Indiana reacted, in my opinion, too harsh, but there was a lot of public pressure. So I could see what the higher-ups at Indiana were trying to do. That's a tough balance to make.
I don't think it was too harsh, only because he had been warned. If he hadn't been warned, maybe you could say that, but he had been warned.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's.
Well, how many times can you warn somebody?
No, I understand, but it's still. You can't say then he didn't do it in the. I mean, this just can't be just an occurrence that just happened. All of a sudden. Look, the way Bobby Knight is, he graduated 90% of his players. Yeah. He had successful teams. Players wanted to play for him. Parents wanted their kids to play for him. The pressure came out. I'm not blaming the heads of Indiana. They had to do what they had to do. I mean, they were under pressure just as much as anybody to make up a decision. And people were going to pull this. People were going to pull that. It's the same type of public pressure about the Washington Redskins, trying to change the name because a group of people don't like it. But then you turn around and there's groups of people of that same group that don't like it, Right. But it all comes down to the almighty dollars. And I think what happened was some donors started to say, well, I might not donate to your program anymore because then I'm going to be labeled as the guy that supports this. and that may hurt my business. And I think, money and pressure and political correctness all led to Bobby Knight leaving. And
him
again,
acting inappropriately.
What's that?
And him acting inappropriately.
No. I was just going to say, but at the end of the day, Bobby Knight, what he did was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
like if he had grabbed my son by the throat, I would have punched him in the face.
Correct. But I think that's why Fran didn't get looked at seriously because of his intensity. That's my opinion.
Well, here's I think you could be right. And here's my question is, what happened, and this is really the first time I've ever looked hard at his resume. In 1985, he became the head coach at Lehigh. I think he was one of the youngest coaches in the country, if not the youngest coach in the country at the time. He coached there from 85. He coached there for 3 seasons. The last season, he went to the NCAA tournament, to the first round with Lehigh. They had a record of 21-10. Now, after that, he wasn't a head coach again until 1999-2000. He had an NCAA team, and then he wasn't a coach again until 1999-2000. And I think that's when he went to Notre Dame, but why would he leave? You know what I mean?
Maybe he had, I don't know, maybe he had some personal issues going on, at that point. If something bad, really bad occurred with Fran, we would have heard it by now.
No, and I'm not saying I'm not saying something really, really bad happened. I'm saying it's probably more along the lines of what you were saying is, you wonder if there was an altercation with an AD or something happened that he didn't get ahead or that he wasn't the head coach there anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know why you're the youngest head coach in the country, and you just went to the NCAA tournament and you leave.
Well, yeah, okay, so 88, Lehigh, and then for 10 years, he went to Notre Dame at that point.
Yeah.
And I think he left Notre Dame because didn't their head coach leave around that time? Around 99, I want to say. But okay, he gets a job at North Carolina, Greensboro, 15, 19, 20, and then he had a couple bad seasons, and then Siena.
Right.
Who knows, but you can look at any coach that way. You could look at the coach at Oakland University right now. I bet you he could be a good coach for anybody. He could be a good coach for someone, but I don't know. Maybe something personal was going on. Maybe he liked it at Notre Dame. Who knows?
Right.
Who knows? But every stop he's made, he's done a good job.
No, I agree. It's just interesting. That's a gap that you just don't see very often. You don't see a team or a coach go 10 years without being a head coach after his last job he won. You just don't see that very often. I'm reading something here. 1985 saw what could have been one of the most improbable conference tournament runs in history. Head coach Tom Schneider and assistant Fran coach Biangards, blah, blah, blah. After Queen and Pola and McCaffrey, who jumped to Notre Dame as an assistant in '88 and is currently head coach in perennial Cinderella. Okay. Yeah, but all this says is he left to go to Notre Dame, which is what we knew. We just didn't know. That just seemed like such an odd thing. But you know what? It all worked out in Iowa's favor because he ended up where we want him.
Well, yeah, and I think he took advantage of the fact that Iowa was looking for a Tom Davis type play. I remember exactly when they hired Fran, and they said, look, we want to go back to what Iowa basketball is, and that's fast-paced, up-tempo. So they were looking for someone like that, and here you had a guy sitting there that was successful at Siena, took him to the tournament, had some noise in the tournament, and said, hey, you want it? And of course, he's not going to turn down a Power 5 conference, which, Iowa had been consistently good, up until Licklider, at least consistently going to the tournament. Alford ran into the problems with the players off the court, stuff like that. That's where the downfall started, and then you just compounded the fact by hiring Licklider, which when they hired Licklider, I was mad. I did not want Licklider. I will be the first to brag. I did not want Licklider.
I didn't either. You know what? I really didn't know too much about him. All I knew was he was the reigning coach of the year in the Big Ten,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the country. And he was going to slow it down, and I did not like the idea of slowing it down. And then I remember my brother and I watching the introductory press conference, and I remember watching it and going, and after it was done, going, "Oh my God, I don't want this guy as as the coach at Iowa." He was so dry and just didn't seem like an enjoyable person to be around.
Right. No, I mean, he looked miserable all the time. Well, here, I found an old article here. It says, McCaffrey, Lehigh coach, becomes assistant at Notre Dame. And it said, Fran McCaffrey, head coach at Lehigh, has accepted a position as assistant to Notre Dame coach Digger Phelps. McCaffrey, 29, led them to a 21-10 season, the best in Lehigh's history, blah, 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 blah. And McCaffrey's quote was, I felt all along that there really is only one assistant's job in this country that I'd leave a head coaching job for, and that's Notre Dame's. He said, no question about it, this is the kind of opportunity I've aspired since I started coaching, and it's going to be nice to be able to go after the best players in the country. I'm really excited.
Yeah, interesting.
So he wasn't forced out of Lehigh. He took the route to go coach under Digger Phelps.
You wonder if he thought he wasn't going to be as good as he could have been without doing that, or that's still a strange move. I mean, let's just be honest. That's a strange move because he ended up going then from Lehigh and going back to a mid-major school.
Yeah.
Or even a low-major school.
Yeah.
Where did he go after that?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, he's not being forced out because as I'm scanning through this article, his quote in this article is, my goal is to become a head coach at a major Division I school, and I don't think there's a better way to do that than by coming to Notre Dame. I'm coming to a school that has a legitimate chance to go to the Final Four every year.
Which then it didn't really work out that way because he went to UNC Greensboro after that. It didn't work out the way he thought it was going to work out. But again, in the long run, I'll take it because it led him to Iowa.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you look, so he went over with Digger. So obviously his path, he felt, by taking an assistant at a bigger school would help his resume more than at Lehigh. And maybe back then it's a little bit different, you know.
Yeah, it could have been.
The path to, becoming
a
head coach was a little bit different than it is now, because nowadays I think more people are looking at younger coaches than I think they were in years past.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think every game basically being on TV now helps people catch up and see other teams and see other things. Whereas, you're coaching at Lehigh before, and you want to go to a major school. Well, the coach at Iowa probably doesn't know a whole lot about the coach at Lehigh in 1989.
Right. Whereas you can say, hey, we got one of the top assistants from Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sounds better. Where if you say, hey, I got a top assistant from Notre Dame, as opposed to, oh, we decided to grab the youngest guy who's done a good job at Lehigh.
Yeah. No, I
And
agree.
it,
I think it's just you just don't see it. You wouldn't see it now at all. You would not see anybody.
Absolutely not.
You would not see anybody who is a head coach leave that head coaching job to go be an assistant somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It does look odd, but maybe that's, that has to be just how it was back then.
Yeah.
But he's got what he said back then. I got a Division I job at one of the top schools.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to put Iowa. Iowa has a chance every year to crack the top 25 more times than not.
Yeah,
I think that goes with football and basketball, as long as you have solid coaching, and I think coaches realize that.
Well, and to be quite honest, it probably should be easier to do it in basketball as opposed to football because, like I said, you're going to get 1 to 2 really good quality basketball players from the state of Iowa every year. And if you just keep them home, then you're looking at, you could be half of your lineup could be kids from Iowa, and then you supplement them from others. Whereas football, you're going to get maybe 4 to 5 really high quality football players every year, and that's not going to. I mean, you're talking 15, 20 kids out of 100 or 82 or whatever you can have on scholarship. So in basketball, really, it probably actually is a little bit easier if you can keep the Iowa kids home.
Exactly, and I think, look, Fran's on his way. He's got a good class coming in next year. Hopefully, the freshmen will learn from this year, and there's going to be that experience factor. There's a lot of drop off, but. This is you kind of look at it, this is the progression you want. You look at Ohio State. Ohio State has a drop-off this year because they're young. That could be Iowa next year, too, because they're young.
Right.
But Ohio State next year and the year after is going to be pretty good. And then you follow that up, Iowa's going to be pretty good again. And you just hope on those down years where you have that inexperience, you have players step up, and that's where you kind of develop a more consistent program. And I think within the last few years, Fran has done that with Iowa. They went from runner-up NIT to 2 NCAA tournaments in a row, and now here you are. We're all of a sudden talking number 1 seeds, possible Final Four, national championship conversations. Whereas next year, you're not going to have that expectation. You're going to have the middle of the pack type of thing. And if they shine, they shine. If they don't, they don't. They're young. But then once they get experienced, they'll be back up there again.
I saw a tweet, and I forget it was from John Rothstein or Seth Davis. It was a national basketball guy, and this was after Iowa beat Michigan State and Purdue, I think, just to open the Big Ten season. And he said something to the effect of, Iowa's proving that it is much more important. Who you have coming back is more important than who you have coming in, unless you're getting one and done type of guys. But it was just basically, you want to have juniors and seniors on your team. And that's why Bo Ryan always had such good teams is because he didn't have guys leaving early for the most part, and he always had juniors and seniors that contributed. So then you had, and it's been the same way for Iowa in the last few years. You had Matt Gatens. He was your star player. He was a senior. Then you had Devin Marble. He was your star player. He was a senior. Then last year you had Aaron White and Olashaney, and to a certain extent Oglesby too, and they were your seniors. And now you've got another group of 4 seniors who are playing. So the problem is now, whoa, the dog is not happy.
Yeah, I'm in the basement. Let's put it that way.
Then you have the other, then next year you're only going to have 1 senior. So that's why you're going to see that drop off next year, because you got 1 senior, and really you're going to have Dom Ewell. Is he going to be your only junior?
Yeah, you'll have, well, yeah, he might be your only junior. So it'll be Jock, Ewell. I mean, next year might be a little lean.
It's gonna be back to the NIT type of thing.
It could be. But then again, the thing is I don't want to say that, and I don't want to say they could sneak in the NCAA tournament, because the question mark is, how are these players going to play? We don't know, because right now we're not seeing but Wagner.
Right.
We don't know. Maybe these guys do shine, and that's why I'm saying, these guys, you're going to have Jock and Ewell. Ewell will take over for probably what Utah does or Jock does, whatever spot they put him in. But then, yeah, next year is more important as far as the young players. But to your point, you look at LSU. Ben Simmons, they got the college basketball players they got the number 1 draft pick in the NBA probably.
Right.
And they're bad.
Yeah.
So it does make sense to have what Iowa does.
I think that's absolutely the way to do it. I think I wouldn't do it the way Kentucky does it, to be quite honest, and really Duke's kind of getting that way too. I don't want 5 one-and-done guys.
Right.
I don't want it. I maybe want 1, and then I want guys who are going to fill in and be juniors and seniors. Otherwise, you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, you're a question mark every year. And at one point, that question mark's going to bite you. And really, right now, although they're still top 25 teams, barely, you don't know what you're going to get from those guys. Obviously, they're not as good as what they should be. But I agree. I like how teams build. I'm a little more old school. I like how they build, and they say, okay, they're pretty good, they're getting good, they're really good, they're gelling, and they're firing on all cylinders. I don't like we got this guy. Oh, I wonder he'll be the number 3 pick in the NBA next year.
Right. Well, it's like, did you ever watch that? I think it's the best one they've ever done. The 30 for 30 with North Carolina State.
No, I did not see that one.
Oh, it's the best one they've ever done. Ooh, Duke and Miami are about ready to go at it. And anyway, then what happened, or what ended up, North Carolina State, I don't know if you remember the team. You might be a little bit young. They had all juniors and seniors coming back. And Jim Valvano was just in his 3rd year there, I think. And they had 1 freshman, the guy who ended up getting the dunk at the end. But long story short, their best player got hurt midway through the season, right when the ACC season was getting ready to start. And they ended up being just 3 games over 500, or like 17-12 or something like that. Well, back then, you didn't have 64 teams going in. You only had 52, I think. And they had to win the ACC tournament to get in. Well, they went back and they're talking to these guys later, and gosh, he was such a good basketball player, and for the life of me, I can't remember what his name is right now. But he was a 6'2" guard, and he was a senior, and Michael Jordan was a sophomore, I believe. But they played them in the ACC semifinals, and this guy says, "Hey, back then, you went and you played against each other for for 4 years." He said, I was a senior, and I didn't care who Michael Jordan was. Michael Jordan was a sophomore. I was a senior. I was going to kick his butt."
Right.
And that was just the thought process. And I think that's what, I think Jared Utoff and the guys now are thinking, Mike Cassell's going to go into Maryland and go, Melo Trimble's a sophomore. I'm a senior. I've been around the league a lot longer than he has. I'm going to kick his ass on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mentality that these guys have, and the mentality that most seniors will have.
And it provides a closeness. And I think to me, it makes it more of where, like, a Kentucky recently and a Duke right now who's obviously going to lose this game, but there's no cohesiveness. I mean, you look at some of the Duke teams that were good. You had Hurley and you had Leitner, and those weren't one and done types.
No.
Those were they were a team. They were a quality team. And watching the Miami Duke game right now, I wish someone would just punch the guys on Miami. They are, they're ticking me off. Anyways, but you look at that, they were a team, and now it's almost becoming backyard basketball.
Yeah.
And I could tell you for a while there, especially more in the 90s than anything, Davenport Central, if they're going on a local level, could have had some really good teams. And those teams could have easily beat those top teams from West. But the thing that West had as opposed to Central is West had discipline, Central had backyard basketball.
Yeah.
And when you take good talent in your backyard basketball, you don't know what you're going to get day in and day out. You might get a team where they blow out the competition by 20, but they might also lose by 20.
Right.
But as you're looking at Iowa right now, they're consistent. All the games that they've lost have been by 6 or less.
Yeah.
Okay? But the ones that they've won, they're consistently winning double figures because they play within themselves. They know, Gazelle knows his role. Clemens finally knows his role. And I think Clemens was the biggest key of turning things around. But as far as the cohesiveness goes, but everybody knows their role right now. And when Ewell and when Jock are now the leaders next year, they're going to know their role.
Right.
And that feeds to the younger players. Yeah, and that's why Iowa might not get those one-and-done types. They got Ricky Davis because Ricky Davis lived 45 minutes away, and Tom Davis did something that I didn't really like, and he kind of, he conceded a lot and listened to Ricky's father too much, in my opinion. But Iowa's not going to get those players, and I'm fine with that. But Iowa just needed a coach that can consistently grow players, and I think they finally got it. And Kentucky right now and Duke right now are showing that your one and done is hurting you.
Yes. Yeah. You know what the funny part is your one and done is going to get you about the same spot that if you had the guys for 3 to 4 years. You're not going to be the title contender every year, but you're going to you're about once every 3 or 4 years you're going to have that Final Four type team at that school, whereas Iowa is like once every 30 years. But
Right.
if Kentucky, instead of going for the 5 guys who are going to be one and dones, if they went for the next 5, they're going to be there 2 or 3 years. then all of a sudden they're a national championship team every single year. Every year they're a national championship team because now you've got elite talent who is also experienced.
But then that's where the pro ranks come in, and what their rules are, and what their on who they let in. In football, you're a stud defensive back. You can't leave until your junior year.
Right.
In basketball, they'll take someone who's 18.
Well,
so that adds a little bit to it as well, I think, because
it absolutely does.
Now there might be a fringe high school player that's, like Ben Simmons.
You there?
He needs that seasoning.
You're cutting out on us, Corey.
He needs that as a
You there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So the NBA scout or the NBA organizations kind of control it a little bit, and that's why I root for those teams. Now, I wanted to root for Wisconsin, but they had Bo Ryan, and I didn't like him, don't like him. I couldn't root for Wisconsin.
Well, there's two things I'm going to look at, hopefully before our next show, and I have some stuff written on it. But they are Illinois and where they compare. One, and two, I wanted to see, because I did a little looking already in like Golden State, San Antonio, obviously the two best teams in the league. I think at most between the two of them, they have like one and done player on their team. Everybody else has been to school. Everybody's either come from overseas or been to school. So, to me, I start looking at it and I think, if that's the way it is, then why is everyone drafting all these guys? Because basically you're drafting guys now in the NBA, and you don't know if they're going to be any good or not. It's like drafting a baseball player, and you got to put him on your major league team now at 18 years old or 19 years old. Because that's the way it's set up, and even though you have no idea if they're going to be any good or not.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Look some of that stuff up. I guess it's two philosophies. It comes down to the Yankees and to the Royals type of thing. You throw a bunch of money at it, and eventually you're going to be successful, and you might be successful for 2-3 years, or the other philosophy is build within and see how it goes from there. I don't know. I like to see talent grow. I mean, it's been good to see these Hawkeyes grow up to what they are now, and hey, it's a very special season. I just, as a Hawkeye fan, I'm trying my best to just sit back and enjoy it, and not get myself too worked up. Even though I still cuss at the TV every 5 minutes.
Oh, always. Well, we'll be back Wednesday night before they even play again. So we'll probably do a little more previewing of that then, and maybe talk a little. Iowa State's getting ready to play now. For you, Corey, I suggest you either record it or go watch it. The ESPN 3030 with Jim Valvano is starting right now.
Yeah, probably, because I gotta go pick up my son here in about 10 minutes, but Iowa State to me is your Illinois. I'm not a big fan of Iowa State. I want to be because it's Iowa, but I have too many family and friends that have misguided talking points that brag when they shouldn't brag, and that made me hate Iowa State. So I'm hoping for an Iowa State loss. I will rather watch that 30-30, and I want to talk some Cubs because there's some rumors heating up about Javier Baez.
Yep, I've seen them. We'll talk about those on Wednesday night.
And we got the Super Bowl, too, we got to talk about.
I know.
We didn't even touch the NFL.
No, we didn't.
So who are you going to root for? You gonna root for an old 85 Bear? You going to root for a good NFL spokesman, a good guy in Peyton Manning?
If this is Manning's last year, I'm rooting for Manning. But we'll talk about
I agree with that. But we'll get to that on Wednesday. Other than that, if you've got nothing else, I've got nothing else.
I don't.
All right, you've been listening to QCSportsInferno.com, presenting ZRadio. We'll be back Wednesday, 6 to 8. Write this number down, 309-524-5558. Join on in. We'll talk some more. I'm out.
Peace.